already got 7 people in the room. I might be busy tonight. Excellent. So, what's been going on since the last time we was here? What have you been up to, Darren?
Well, I've been having some fun doing some testing. I've been doing some vacuum module modifications and testing. I've been testing a lot on my car, and yeah, just having some scientific fun, trying to figure out ways to make it run better. And I think it's a limitation with the vacuum system, so I'm going to start there.
Yeah. So just to let everybody know that Darren's been working on his economy and trying to squeeze as much economy out of his little 998. And it's quite an interesting project, actually, because Darren's 998 is not in the first flush of youth, is it? So trying to squeeze as much out of a worn 998 is an interesting way forward. But I've spent many a late evening speaking to Darren, talking about how to optimize the ignition and telling him how to, showing him a way to do it. So we've come up with an interesting experiment, and we don't know the results yet, other than the fact we've bench tested it, and we've got an initial fuel saving at 1 RPM point of almost, well, I think it is 30%. Now, whether that translates into on the road, well, we shall see. But at the end of the day, it is something that Darren has been working on, and is potentially something that people can maybe learn from in the future once he spills the beans and we get some results. And it might not it might not come to anything, but the point is, you got to be in it to win it. Yeah. Yeah. You got your line's bad tonight.
Oh, I'll set and come back in.
Okay. All right. Cool. So while Darren goes off and comes back in, what I've been doing in the last month is basically I'm back on the road tuning. So in reality, I've been pounding the tarmac, going all over the place, and starting this year's season of tuning cars. So which I've already put the videos up, and I'm sure everybody's been watching. So thank you very much for those who have watched them. But one thing that I did get some questions on was dwell angle. So before I going to dive into lots of questions tonight, I was going to use this opportunity to explain a little bit more about dwell angle, variable dwell, ballast coils, and all that kind of jazz. All right. So, because people are still confused about standard ignition, 3 ohm coils, 1.4 ohm coils, 1.5 ohm coils, 0.8 ohm coils, 1 ohm coils, 1.2 ohm coils. I could keep going until the world ends. But the point is, it's actually really simple, and people need to understand how the system is working and the physics behind it, really, as to what coil you need. I get no end of questions going, what coil do I need on this, and what plug gap do I have for that, and which is what, and all the rest of it. And those are questions from people who don't understand the system. They just want to know what part it is. But my point is, if you understand the system, you can at least try and use that information to work stuff out for yourselves. And that's what I'm trying to do with a lot of my videos, is trying to educate people, so you don't have to ask simple questions like what plug gap and all this sort of stuff. So if I just start off with dwell angle and what that's all about. Now, if you take a standard 12-volt ignition system with a 3 ohm coil, which is what a typical standard ignition system would be, it could vary. So it could be from 2.5 to sort of 3.7 maybe for very old cars. And as ignition systems evolved through the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, resistance of coil windings dropped, and up to a minimum on a 12-volt system of 2.5 ohms. Okay, so we normally call 2.5 ohms, that's a 3 ohm system. It's a straight coil, 3 ohms or 2.5 2.7, whatever the coil is, and that's the primary resistance of the coil. Now, that is switched on and off on those older engines by contact breakers, and those contact breakers open and close depending on the position of the cam when they're actuating the points. And the most important thing to understand here is it's not just switching it on and off. There is time involved, and the time involved is expressed as dwell. Okay, and dwell is basically the time at which the points are closed. Okay, so that's the point at which between the high points on the cam lobe in the distributor where it's not lifting the points. Okay, and it's imperative. Thank you very much, Darren. That's it. He's pointing to the lobes on the cam. So if you just turn that slightly, Darren, and then we can show people what we mean by. So if you just turn the shaft, and it's the dwell is the bit between. That's it. That's the dwell there. That's lifting, dwell, and lifting. So it's the dwell period that's important, because that is all about how much energy is used to put into the coil, so that the coil has a certain amount of energy which it can then turn into a high voltage spark of a certain intensity. So if you set your points gap with a too large a gap, your dwell angle is small. Okay, and the reason why it's called dwell angle is because it's expressed in a degree measurement, and that's basically a degrees of cam rotation. And when I'm talking about the cam in the distributor here, not the cam in the engine, so the cam in the distributor. And typically on a 12-volt system, you need older systems that add maybe 3.4, 3.5, 3.7 ohms of coil resistance would have 60 degrees of dwell. So there's quite a large charging time, because the coil itself wouldn't take that much current because it's quite high resistance. So this is all to do with Ohm's law. The lower the resistance you have, the more current can flow for a given voltage. It makes it slightly more complicated in a running engine, because the faster the engine runs, the more RPM you're doing, the less time that there is to charge the coil. So even though that you might have 60 degrees of dwell, for example, well, that 60 degrees of dwell is still 60 degrees whether you're doing 6,000 revs or 1,000 revs. The only difference is you're doing it a lot more often, so there's a lot less time between those coil periods. And that's why as time went on, coil power needed to increase, because RPM potential of the engines increased. And then, of course, we all know the Americans have their great big V8s, so they had the same problem, but they had twice as many cylinders, so they had to have even lower, resistance coils to get even, to generate more power to fire all those plugs. And then some silly Herberts came along and decided they want to make muscle cars and make them rev a bit, and you make them really go. So therefore, you had to have dual point distributors and very low ohm coils to put up with that increase in RPM with 8 cylinders. So
or dual coils.
Oh yeah, or dual coils and things like that. So coming back to the stuff that we know, which is minis, and classic British cars, 4-cylinder stuff. As time went on and revs rose, we needed to put more power in the system. So basically what happened is the resistance came down to a point which is about 2.5 ohms on a point system, whereby if you went any lower, you would end up overheating the points or having very short contact life. So there came a point where you needed to change that. And what they needed to do was either go electronic, which was at the time expensive, or deemed unnecessary or unpalatable, whatever. So they invented the ballast system, and the ballast system basically uses a coil that's got potentially half the resistance. So in the particular case I'm talking here, here's some coils. They look exactly the same. Yeah, perhaps one's a bit bigger than the other, but in this particular case, they're totally different. This one's a 0.8 ohm, this one's a 1.4 ohm. So you can't just look at a coil and go, well, they're all the same, because they're not. And that's why people get confused as to what they need. So a ballast system basically uses a ballast resistor, okay? And what a ballast resistor is effectively just is an aftermarket one. That's basically a wire wound resistor, okay, nichrome wire in a ceramic block. Now, in the cars we're talking about, minis, metros, and classic British Leyland stuff, they didn't use this type. What they used was a wire that was in the loom, but it still got hot. So the point to understand about a ballast resistor is it's a little bit more than what it first looks. So everybody says, "Oh, what's this?" Well, this one's rated at 1.6 ohms. And basically, if you put it in series with a 1.4 ohm coil, you will make 3 ohms resistance. Funny enough, where do we get the 3 ohms from? Well, 3 ohms is the same as the original points were rated for, with the original systems that we had back in the 60s, etc. So what basically happens here is if you've only got a 1.5 ohm coil, okay, and then you start the engine, when the engine's running slowly and there's a lot of time available during the dwell period, you'll end up oversaturating the coil, but burning the points, things like that. So what they do is when your engine is running idle, you have the resistor in line, so it runs normal current. If you was to not run the ballast resistor, you would overheat and melt the points, which is what normally happens when you run a low ohm coil and no control with points. Now, the other thing that the ballast resistor does in these scenarios is when you're running in that scenario, you haven't got 1.6 ohms that this is rated at, because this gets hot. So the hotter that gets, the more the resistance increases by a little bit. So, maybe 2 ohms. Yeah. So that basically further reduces the current in the system by dropping more voltage across that resistor. So there's less volts applied to the coil, thus reducing the electrical pressure applied to the circuit, reducing the current. So conversely, as the revs rise, and even though the dwell angle's fixed at typically 54, 55 degrees on a ballast system, there is less time in the system to charge the coil. That means the current in the system drops. Now, when you've got the ballast in line, 2 things happen. First of all, less current flows through the resistor. That means it cools down. That means its resistance drops a little. Okay. So this is only 1.6 ohms, as this one's rated at room temperature. Yeah, or now, because I've checked it and it is that. So when it's cold, it has the lowest resistance. So as the revs rise, there's less current flow in the system. This cools down, its resistance reduces back to what it is now. And therefore, the voltage dropped across that resistor reduces, thus increasing the voltage on the coil. That means that as the revs rise, the voltage on the coil rises. And what that does is counteracts the reduced charge time due to the less, increased revs, less time to charge the coil. So in fact, what you actually get is a more of a constant energy system. And that's why you have a ballasted system on a later points car, because later points cars had higher compression, higher revving engines, and they needed more power further up the rev range. Okay, so that's where that comes from. Now, as time went on, things got a little bit more complicated. And the reason why they got more complicated, because we went to electronic ignition, and we did electronic ignition for many reasons, but namely smoothness, reliability, don't need to change the points, just things and all that. It's just nice and constant. Now, when you have electronic ignition, you have many benefits, and one of which is you can have a much bigger switch, so you can switch much more current. Now, when you have an electronic system, you can run a much higher power coil. So you can go from 1.4 down to 0.8 ohms. And that's exactly what the factory did. And not just Austin Rover, but Ford and everybody else. And they went to a higher power system. Now, in order to not oversaturate the coil when you're idling, when you've got lots of time to charge that coil, they also went to variable dwell, and they got rid of the ballast resistor. Okay, so what variable dwell does is effectively do what that did. Okay, so variable dwell is the electronic version of that. So if you've got that in your system and you've got variable dwell, you've got two lots of restriction, which is going to reduce the current and make your ignition system not work as well. And this is why you have to understand what system you have with what coil, etc., etc. All right. So having the a ballast resistor in your system as well as variable dwell is a bad thing. Okay. So going back to electronic ignitions, so a variable dwell system, what that basically does is at low speed, it reduces the dwell angle, which therefore reduces the coil charge time, because you don't need a lot of coil charge time when you've only got a 0.8 ohm coil, because you've still got the same voltage in the system applied from the vehicle's electrical system, typically 14 volts when the engine's running. And at 0.8 ohms, you would push a lot of current, which would quickly burn the coil out. So what they do is they reduce the charging time by reducing the dwell angle electronically within the distributor. And that means that when you're idling, you can have a high current, low ohm coil not overheating because it's being controlled by the variable dwell system in the distributor. Now, on the other hand, when you increase the revs, because the time reduces, the distributor automatically compensates by increasing the dwell angle. So it puts more energy through the coil, and thus at high RPM, you actually get basically a full 14 volts on a 0.8 ohm coil. But because the high RPM at 6,000 revs, the time that's applied is very small, you maximize the spark energy going through the system, and you minimize the heat because you're not overcharging the coil. So the variable dwell system was designed to increase coil power by effectively utilizing a much lower ohm coil and controlling that so you don't overcharge it at low RPM. So that's effectively, I would say in a nutshell, it's a bit more than a nutshell, but that's effectively how that system works. Okay. And the most important thing to understand about what systems you have is when you get systems where you're mixing and matching components. All right. So when you see me out on the road and people update systems and they've got, is it a variable dwell? Is it not is it a fixed dwell ignition system like like an electronic system? Because some of the early ones were. So you can't fit a low ohm coil on that without a ballast resistor. So those fixed dwell electronic units need to use a ballast resistor. And when you use a ballast resistor with those, you're typically only using a 1.5, 1.4 ohm coil. And it's most important to understand that you can't just go and fit a 0.8 ohm coil on any system. It has to be, the module itself has to be rated for the current. So just because something's variable dwell doesn't mean that you can put a high power coil on it. So that's where you have to contact the manufacturer and ask them what the appropriate lowest ohm coil that you can run with that is. Now, currently at the moment, the problem is a lot of the units that are available, the lowest they'll fire is about 1.4 ohms. Okay. So there's a reason why I carry the Power Spark units, is because they have a system which is equivalent to the factory high power system, which was the 65D Lucas electronic. That fires a 0.8 ohm coil. It doesn't use a ballast resistor because it's variable dwell. And you get massive sparks all of the time, which is what you want. So Power Spark sell a unit which matches that, has variable dwell, and fires a 0.8 ohm coil without a ballast resistor in line because it has variable dwell and it's rated for it. And they are very reliable because I use them all the time. So I've stopped selling any other type of ignition because there is literally no point. If somebody wants to go from points and upgrade to electronic, I will only sell them a high power 0.8 ohm setup because it's the same price as selling them the lower power system. Makes no sense. So you only stop what gives me the best burn, and the best burn is when I've got the biggest sparks available and the biggest plug gaps, and that only happens when I'm using a low ohm coil, high power system. And you can see Darren has been nodding all the way along there because he understands what I'm saying. I just hope I've said that clear enough for people so that when you watch this later, you can understand where I'm coming from. Now, I've no doubt I'm going to get loads of questions on this because people won't understand. I get that. I'm not the best orator. I'm not the best explainer of things. And the problem is when I'm explaining it, I know it all in my head. Okay. I know all this. The problem is I might be missing things out for people who don't know, and they're not necessarily getting exactly where I'm coming from. So I appreciate I might still get some more questions. Anyway, sorry to steal the limelight, Darren. So over to you for a bit.
No, great. Yeah, the dwell explanation, it comes up, and the points and contacts and breakers and the 1.5, all that stuff comes up often on my end as well. In fact, I had a bit of a remote tune Saturday with a gentleman who had a fairly late 80s car, had a points distributor with a ballast resistor. And when we started our discussion, I noticed that he had the ballast wire. So he was running the ballast wire to the ballast resistor, the exact problem you just described. So I told him to ditch the aftermarket resistor and just hook up the original wire. On those cars that have those systems where they have the resistor wire, they usually have a second wire going to the ignition coil, which runs to the starter solenoid to give a full 12-volt feed on cranking. So that's one way of kind of identifying that circuit. But I always do a voltage check at that wire to make sure it is either a ballasted or non-ballasted. The ballasted ones will always be like 9 or 10 volts or something to that effect. Also, I wanted to mention that PowerSpark makes that module that you discussed in all flavors of their distributors. So if you're someone who needs to have aesthetically, a 25 or a 45D, you can still get the performance of a 65D in one of those earlier design packages. And that's another reason why we like using it. Now, I have spent time looking for other companies that make units but no one makes anything that powerful. There's no one literally making a plug and play setup that's this powerful.
So that's people say to me, why do you have PowerSpark? I have PowerSpark because there's one reason, and the other reason is I don't have to go back because they don't break down. Okay, now they can be finicky if you don't use the right parts. So if you put the wrong ohm coil on, or you have a ballast resistor feeding it, you might have problems. Okay, so this is where people, I've had people go, oh, these PowerSpark units are shit. No, they're not. Right? They're not. Trust me. I don't have them going wrong. Okay, so again, I only want to sell stuff when I'm out on the road tuning that's reliable. Okay, so I've worked this out by looking at what was available on the market, and that's what I chose. I'm not saying the others aren't as reliable. I haven't used them for that. My point is, I wanted something that was matched the original factory high output. Okay, PowerSpark gave me that, and I also get the reliability with it as well. So I'm very happy.
And it's at a good price point as well.
Yeah, and they do good prices. And people say to me, "Oh, but these distributors are not made the same." So no, of course they're not made the same. But for the price, doesn't matter. They're like sweets. If it goes wrong, just buy another one. Yeah, that's all you got to do. Should we start?
Sorry. When I went to
should we start going down the questions, because I noticed there's lots.
Yeah. When I went to South Dakota, I didn't bring a spare distributor. I just drove there and came back.
That's it.
800, 1,000 miles, whatever it was. I didn't think about it. I just went.
Yeah. 800. There you go. 800 or 1,000 miles on his PowerSpark distributor. Didn't even bat an eyelid. Yeah. And still did what 50 to the gallon, 55, something like that, or whatever it was, Imperial. Yeah,
it was like 45 US at one point.
Yeah, so that's not a crap distributor. Yeah, if it can do that.
Yeah, the only problem I had was that the coil was on the harness and just got fatigued, and I couldn't have it maintain a steady voltage feed to the coil, so I had to fix it on the side of the road. But that was nothing to do with the PowerSpark equipment whatsoever. So yeah, I'm really happy using their stuff as well.
Yeah.
In fact, I just put an order in this afternoon for a bunch of distributors.
Nice. So you can't see, but behind me, there's the stock that I've got already curved, and that's on top of the 6 I already carry. So I've tried to get a little bit ahead of myself. So I've got plenty in stock. Anyway, let's go down the list. So there's a lot of people on here tonight. We've got 103. That's the most we've ever had. So wow,
great.
Thank you very much. Well, it's just dropped down to 95 now, but the point is, thank you. So can I have some likes, please? Because can't have all these people watching and no likes. So please hit that like button, and then we'll start going down the questions now, and I'll do hopefully less talking and a bit of answering. Okay, so we got lots of people saying hi. Stefan Mini Cooper, book my IMM ticket. Ferry, hope to manage. Hope you can manage to do my Mini at the IMM. I will do my best, Stefan. But as always at an IMM, I am going to be rammed. Okay, so I've got a plan for that. Unfortunately, I've thought about the price this year, and it's not going to be as cheap as it's been before. Okay, and there's a reason for that. Is because I don't want to queue halfway around the site and halfway out, queuing out on the road just to come and see me. Okay, so I only want people in that queue that really want to tune up by me. Okay, so if I have a shorter queue, then that's going to help people. So as I say, it's not necessarily going to be as cheap as it has been in the past. But the point is, I have to try and keep the queue as sensible as I can, because I've had people get grumpy before at the IMM with the queue because it's so long. So I've got to do something. Anyway, everybody's saying, yeah, greetings, hi, all the rest of it, which is fantastic. Matthew Steele, I have a spring question. Is there a way of identifying a spring if no colour? Maybe weight, OD of material used. Yeah. Now, when you're talking springs, Matt, are you talking SU carb springs? Because I assume you am. So yes, there is a way of doing it. Can I just disappear off the camera for a second while I go and get me SU book? If you can carry on. If you go down to the next question, take the next question, and we'll come back to it. All right. So I'll be back in just a second.
So A Series Engine said, do you recommend poly bushes over rubber bushes? It depends on the application. So a lot of suspension bits, I will go with the rubber if I'm building just a road car that's just comfortable. But if I'm looking for more handling and control, I'll go for the poly. I don't like having solid poly on the tie rods. I prefer the half rubber, half poly combo. With the upper engine steady, I typically still stick with the rubber. I don't really like hard mounting to the bulkhead using a poly or a fixed rod. I still want to have some of that movement so that it can rock and shake a little bit. But if I was building a race car, yeah, that'd be a different story.
Okay, so just to answer that previous question on SU springs, so I'm assuming it was SU springs you're talking about. But if you look in the catalogue, it has, and I'll show you the catalogue in a minute, but it has a chart with all the spring weights and the check-in height. Okay, so if you've got a set of scales, you can compress the spring and understand what you got. Unfortunately, it becomes a little bit more difficult when you have an old spring. Because they can vary a bit. Okay, so because they come compressed with age. All right. I do show my students when I do my training a very fast way of doing it, and they all know. So Darren's probably smiling now because he knows how to do it without even measuring. But you only get that when you're on training, so you can identify it. You can identify it without even measuring. So there is a quick way of doing it. But as I say, the way you actually do it is you refer to the specifications in the catalogue. And these catalogues are available from Berlin Fuel Systems, okay? And they're also available from me free when I come to tune your car. And SU Carb sponsor me by giving me these catalogues and allowing me to give these out to people free of charge. So, it's not special because they give them out at shows anyway. But the point is they give me boxes of these that I can then use to give out to my customers. And these catalogues are there It's got all the part numbers of every application, all the parts, all the
Right.
everything that you ever need is in these catalogs. So that's why it's really good to get hold of these. So if anybody's watching out there that has me for a tune-up, please ask one. I'm terrible for remembering to give them out. So if they're out for a tune-up and you say, "Can I have a catalogue?" Right? Yes, you can, because SU Carburetors Limited provide them for you. Okay, free of charge. So please, make sure you get one.
Yeah, and one thing I like about that catalog is you get to see everything they make. So there might be some configuration of parts that you want that's a little bit different on your car. You might have a weird pile of parts and you don't know what's what. That'll help you identify the correct pieces to build up the carb that you're working on.
Yes.
Or if you need to do something custom, like you got a fiberglass bodied car, and you got linkage space problems. They have different configurations and stuff. So it's very, very useful.
Yes. Anyway, moving on. So
sometimes I was going to say with the springs that sometimes it's just easier to fit a new one.
Yeah.
So it's like,
funny you should say that, but when you tune in, if you're gonna rebuild an engine and all the rest of it, rebuild the car, just put a new spring in.
Yeah, the cost is minimal.
Yeah, the cost is minimal, and it will make a difference to the calibration of the needle that's in there. So it's always good to start from a known position, and then as the spring wears, well, you just replace it. Service item. Yeah. How long will it last? Probably 5 years, and then replace the spring. And then, of course, most people have had a car for 40 or 50 years, and then they're moaning that they have to have it rebuilt. It's silly, really, but that's the reality of it. Okay, Stefan Mini Cooper. Last week, I changed my Bosch Blue coil on my 123 ignition by a 123 performance coil from 1.2 ohm. The engine runs and idles much better. Yeah, well done. Excellent. That's exactly why you do it. Thomas Classic Modern. Evening, Ross. Nice to see you there. I will say that Ross is going to be on the next live stream. So not this one, but next time, later in April. So I'm looking forward to that, because obviously I did some training with Thomas Classic and Modern last month. So I'm looking to see how he's got on with that with some customers. I know he's had a few, so that'll be interesting. And obviously he'll be here to answer any questions about car builds, assembling, paint work, body work, engine spec, you name it. So thanks again for joining us tonight, Ross. Appreciate that. John Rudolph suggested larger valve unleaded seat combo that would preserve the 940 head from cracking to use with an RS cam. Just use a standard 29.4 exhaust valve with the in fact the factory insert is good if you've got a cylinder head that is able the seats are still tight in. Okay. But yeah, I'm just trying to think of the insert size. So the insert size, I believe, on those is 1.25 inches in diameter for the standard insert. There's no arm. You can machine them down if you want, just to make that give you a little bit more meat. You could take 50 thou off that and have a 1.2 insert, for example, and that would give you just a little bit more material around that seat. Which would help. Okay, most important thing about stopping the head cracking is keep the heat down. That means ignition advance, vacuum advance. Right, get that vacuum advance on there, get that tuned properly, and you will keep the seat temperatures down. That's important, and that's why I did that video with me holding a silly blowtorch, because blowtorching your valves, that's one way of cracking the cylinder heads. And if you remember, big valves were fitted in a Cooper S engine with no vacuum advance, and what happened to the cylinder heads? Virtually everyone cracked. Yeah.
Well, that's why I've been doing the vacuum advance testing on this one as well.
Yep. Dean Cook, thank you for the dwell explanation, AC. No problem. People asked me for it, so I just thought I would do it on the live stream, and hopefully it helps, and then at least people can play this back and stop and pause it, understand it, play it back again, etc., and hopefully it helps them understand.
They should also go watch your video on the power output that you did, the testing, to show
Oh
how
yeah,
much
that
more
was quite a
powerful
while
it
ago
was.
now, but that's actually a very popular video. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
the one where I've got it in my pillar drill, and I'm actually doing the energy comparison. Actually, what I do need to do is do an update, and I need to do it with a Power Spark one or a 65D with a 0.8 ohm
Well, that'd
coil,
be
so
nice.
you can see the energy as well. That would be interesting. So I will take a mental note to do that video. Okay. Tony Harmer, evening. Yep, nice to see you, Tony. Randall Pereira, you know this guy.
Yeah. Pete's out here with me. We had some fun breakdowns.
You've been with him every time, by the looks of it.
Yeah. Quite fortuitous.
Dean Cook, how far can you overbore a 998 1098 before you offset the bores? Is it plus 60? Yeah. I mean, I've got my own boring machine. I offset the bores in relation to the gasket. So I put the gasket I'm going to use on the block, and then I actually look at where the cylinders actually are, because they're not the same for every block because of the tolerances. And then I move the cylinders around anyway. Okay. So if you're going to do a lot of boring, it's always a good opportunity to do the offsetting when you're doing a lot of passes of the boring machine. So in reality, I don't have any particular rule about offsetting. If I'm going standard to plus 60, I'll put some offsets in anyway, even at plus 60, if I'm boring all that amount of material, because it gives me the option of moving the cylinders to get the optimum space in the gasket or the alignment. So I've got no bore overhanging the, no gasket overhanging the fire ring, things like that. So actually, I offset bore regardless. So I'm just, any engine I take in, if I'm only boring it once, standard to plus 20, then I won't. But if I'm going plus 40, I might put one offset in, because I'll just bore it twice, 20 each time. William Jones, great explanation. I'm sure, I think he was talking about the dwell. I think that's what he was referring to. Thank you. William there saying, okay, with the carb at the back of the engine bay, is there any benefit to be had with an enclosed air filter with fresh air feed? Or is a free-flowing filter like, okay, right, okay, good enough. All right. Anytime you can get cold, fresh air to an engine intake, it's better. The most important thing to understand is, if you've got an enclosed air filter, your biggest issue with that typically is restriction. Okay, so it's restricting the airflow to the engine, which will then reduces the power. If it's also picking up its hot air from the exhaust manifold, it's going to restrict the power even further. Okay, so certain engines and certain climate conditions require that you have warm air during cold running to enable proper vaporization of the fuel. So all I'm saying is, when the engine's up to temperature, if you can feed cold air to it, do that. It will run better. You might want to restrict that cold air when it's running from cold start.
Yeah, the factory did that with that special valve on the air filter housing.
Guitar Rich, got all that. How do you check dwell? I could almost tell that this was gonna happen. You need a dwell meter. Okay, so this is the actual dwell that I take out with me on the road tuning, which is the Heathkit item that you've all seen me use in my on the road videos. I'm very jealous of Darren, because he lives in America, where there's a number of these available that you can buy. They're all old and they all need work, so you don't buy them working. You have to know a little bit about electronics to make them work and get them calibrated, but they make excellent meters. The other thing about dwell meter is, here's one that I had during my apprenticeship. Okay, and this is interesting because I was looking at this, and it's an extremely simple circuit. Okay, now anyone out there watching that's into electronics could easily make one of those, and you could make some of these and sell them. All right. And the beautiful thing about this is it's got a beautiful smooth needle and dial. And when that's on an engine and running, there is absolutely no flicker. That is a rock steady. All right. So this is a beautiful circuit, and it works on any number of cylinders. Okay. And it's very simple. Yes, it hasn't got the best screen because this is made up by apprentices, but the point is it works and it is perfectly accurate. Runs on just a D cell. Okay. So if anybody out there wants an electronics project and wants to make up some decent dwell meters, then perhaps they want to get in contact via Facebook Messenger, and then I can make arrangements for them to obtain this so that they can copy the circuit and then think about making them, because I think that's a fantastic bit of kit, and that would certainly make available dwell meters for people to use that are decent and don't flap about like modern digital ones do.
Yeah, the one on the Innova is nice to have, but it's not exactly smooth.
No, my one wasn't too bad, so it's pretty good. I was quite impressed with it on my one, but again, they vary a bit. So
yeah, it's a digital display.
Yeah, digital's a little bit finicky, whereas the old analog meter, the way the needle works, and it's smoothing any of the spikes that you get on the system, so you just get a nice rock steady reading. Okay, so Tony, is there an online source for needle measurement points for different revs? No. No. So what you have to do is there's two ways of working that out. You either pay me and do a training course, and I'll tell you what it's all about, but that costs a lot of money, or you do what I did and work it out from first principles. Simple.
Yeah, there's no harm in experimenting. The worst case, you could buy it on the needle.
Yeah. So no, there isn't, and that's because no one's done it, and the people who have done it won't tell you because it's proprietary information.
Even then, it's not 100% accurate. You got to check.
Yeah, and every carb's different because it depends on the position of the jet and the needle and the distance between the two, and how far the needle has been set up in the carburetor. Yeah,
twin carb versus single.
Yep, it's all different. Okay, Dean Cook, previously you talked about using a 202 head and valve sizes 1100 to 1150 and a 295 head and valve sizes for beyond that. What valve sizes do you like for a 295 head at 1100 to 1150? Okay, so for 1150 engine, the valve sizes I like are the effectively what I like to do is use a 295 head and put a 1300 size inlet valve in it, so 33.2 inlet valve, and a 27 mil or a 26.4 exhaust. All the ones I've done is I've generally gone 26.4 exhaust and a 33 mil inlet, and yeah, fantastic engine, and they're not too big across the seats because you can get an unleaded insert in there and you don't have a problem with the cracking. So yeah, they work really well, Dean. Just
By the way,
add
I'm looking forward to doing Dean's tuning once he gets his carbs back.
Yes, that's going to happen very soon because I was itching to do a video, and I think Dean's carbs are going to be the one for doing zero tolerance modifications on a pair of HS2s, brand new ones. So we'll take a factory set of carbs and we'll massage them, and I'll do a video, I think, but I've just got to get around to doing it. Okay, so Keto, I'm new, just got the recommendation in the feed. What we doing, motorcycle heads? No, Keto, this is for classic A series typically. Okay, classic minis or any engine with an SU carburetor on it, that kind of thing. Pete Holmes, a question for Ross out there, if he's still online, Ross. When you're getting your rolling road? That's the same question I keep asking Ross, but I'll let him answer that one. The last time I asked him that question, he said not yet, but it is something that they are definitely planning on doing.
I'd love to have one here, but I got no space for it.
Yeah. Paul Muff, my Power Spark with all the parts like coil leads, etc., worked great for 4 years, then packed up. I've now gone back to points. Yeah, it's a backward step. Lasted 4 years. Buy another one. They're cheap enough.
Yeah,
and
the modules are pretty
in
expensive.
fact, you don't even have to buy a new one. You just need to buy a module. 35 quid, done.
Yeah, save the curve, save all the other trouble, and you can change it from the top.
Yep. Mayfair 92. My first time in one of your lives. Looking forward to this. Nice.
Nice. Welcome.
Matt Steele. HI 44. I'm not sure what he's referring to there. Springs, I think that might have been. Yeah. Keta, I have a Chevy Silverado with a stuck valve. Yeah, that'll be a Darren one.
Go get an LS engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got no advice on that. It's not English.
Okay.
Matt was saying, he says, perfect. I guess it will wear. Yeah, the springs, they do wear out. They're constantly being worked on. And they're really a wear item. There's so many parts on the engine that's just considered a wear item, but it is not really talked about in the maintenance or repair manuals. Yeah. It's just kind of one of those things that you have to understand.
Two of the most critical things which are springs on an engine, certainly the engines we're messing around with, are carb springs and distributor springs. They're all wear items. Now, those items themselves will wear over time and they'll relax and change the characteristics of what they're trying to deliver. So if you calibrate the thing perfectly, and the springs change, well, it's going to need maintenance and servicing, and that's why you need to check your advance curves in the distributors, and you also need to check the fuel being delivered by the carburetor. Ian Otley, please, can I have a catalogue at the Riv Run? Absolutely. I always have a big box of them at the Riv Run, and sometimes they're all gone by the end of the weekend. So get there early, Ian, and you can have one. Dean Cook, as rule of thumb, lifespan for the damper springs, 5 years.
Well, for regular use, I mean, you only drive it once a year.
Yeah, but no, I disagree, Darren. If it's sat there, it's compressed.
Oh, it's still compressed, yeah.
It's still compressed, so it's still losing rate in there anyway. So give it 5 years and put a new one in. And I always say, people say, how often should I rebuild an SU? Well, if you use it every day, 5 years, and then it needs rebuilding. If you're not using it every day, all right, it's not necessarily going to get the spindle wear and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. But the spring's still going to have a problem because it's always compressed and it's sat there. Springs don't like being sat and held and, compressed.
And also the rubber parts wear out too.
Mayfair 92. What are the telltale signs of bore wash if I have the head off? I'm looking for some sound advice rather than internet hogwash. I like your style, Mayfair 92. I have a video, so if you look down my playlist on YouTube or look down my list of videos, there's one called Bore Wash. So have a look at that, and if you've got any questions, then get back to us. Forward 160. Evening, chaps. AC, do you give out one of the sticker decals after a tune? No. They're available to buy. And I only give them out to people who are either so if you've arranged to have like a multiple car shootout, a multiple car tuning event at your house, the person who arranged it, I'll give them some freebies, right? So they usually get a mug and a couple of stickers, things like that. But the stickers are available to buy, so you can come and see me. They're £3 a sticker. All right. Stefan Mini Cooper, keep one catalogue. I won't keep catalogues. They're on the side. You come and get them. Right? I haven't got time to keep anybody or keep lists of whatever. The box will be at the Riv Run or at the IMM, and when they're gone, they're gone. Same with the stickers. Normally,
so I know you recently posted a link to the mugs,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so the mugs
So
are
you guys
available.
should
You
get
can
these
buy them
mugs
online. But what I normally do at a show is 20 quid for 2 stickers and a mug. All right. So, and these are great big things, beautifully done by the Lemon Stationery and Gift for me. So if you look on, I think the last live stream, it's got it on there. I'm sure somebody can post it in here that knows that. Okay. So what else we got here? John Rudolph, sorry, intake and valve size combination for flow with that exhaust. Are you talking about the 295? Because I think I can't remember what you was talking about, but we talked about 33.2 inlet, 26.4 exhaust with the 295 head. Matt Steele, what are your thoughts on ignition only ECUs? Does this make it easier tweaking things? Any hints on idle cruise? Go. All the dwell questions. Yeah, you can have a standalone ECU just to fire your ignition, because you can have mapping set up, and you get a little bit of anti-stall there as well if you program it properly. So yeah, a mapped ignition is always better than a distributor ignition, because you've got more control and you've got finer tolerances. You know, it's crank fired, so it's perfect every time. So that's what you got to think about. Yeah, but you got to map it, and there's no point in putting it on if you don't map it, because you won't get the benefit out of it. So, you know, I see loads of people and they put a system on and they get rid of the Dizzy and they got mapped a system, and they go and download the ignition advanced curve for a distributor and put that in, and it's like, what a waste of time that is, right? You know, that is completely missing the point of a mapped ignition. Mapped ignition means that you can get the optimum ignition time for every load site, okay? Every throttle opening, every engine speed. And it takes time. And if you want to do that on a rolling road, it's going to cost you a lot of time and a lot of money, okay? So, you know, if you want to fit a mapped ignition, that's great, but you won't get the benefit out of it unless you map it.
Yeah, I've often considered getting a mappable ignition just to mess about with. And I would only start with putting in a base map and then taking it to a dyno and then going from there. You know, one thing you could do is measure an actually mapped car, like an SPI or an MPI. You could figure out at least sort of a base number at fixed RPM points, but that won't give you the whole story. That'll kind of give you what the factory was thinking. So you may not even get the best performance even doing that. So you absolutely want to see what the power figures are on a dyno. And of course, while you're doing that, you're probably going to be tweaking the fueling as well. So plan on spending a whole day there. Yeah. It's not something you're going to do in an hour.
No, definitely not. Okay, so Dean Cook, carbs, hee-haw. They're coming, Dean, don't worry. They're coming. Guitar Rich, cheers, guys. Yeah, no problem. Mayfair 92, thanks for the directions of the ball washer. I hunted down. I'm worried that I may have had too much fuel before you helped remote tune. So all I would say there is, what's your oil consumption? That gives you a good idea of what's going on. So if you're using a lot of oil, then yeah, that may well be the case.
I use a quart every 1,000 miles.
Yeah, but we know your engine's got issues. Okay. So, how much is an engine rebuild in current times? Standard or revive? Well, and see, there's a question, right? Depends how much work you want to do to it. But an engine rebuild to me is a rebuilt gearbox, rebuilt clutch, you know, flywheel refaced, primary gears done, you know, shimmed, drop gears, engine rebuilt, new pistons, new valves, everything, right? You know, if you're going to pay for that, probably going to be anywhere between 8 and 10 grand with somebody, you know, doing that work, taking it out and putting it back in. Okay. you know, and some modifications included in with that. Now, if you do it yourself, you know, 3 or 4 grand will get you sort of a refresh standard engine. So just depends, you know, what work. I mean, if you want to put some modified bits on it, might be 6 grand for you to do it yourself. But it all depends on what your engine needs.
Yeah, and there's no sense in not looking at the gearbox when you're doing the build, because it's just sitting there waiting for you to do the engine build anyway. So you'll have time to do the rebuild of the box. And if you don't rebuild the box, you risk, you know, material drifting out of the box into the engine. So yeah, non-rebuild gearbox is just a source of swarf.
Yeah, I refer to them, a gearbox on an A series Mini is like a swarf production unit. That's what it does all the time, even when new. And as it wears, it gets worse. So the best thing to do is always have it fully rebuilt, and then you will have the minimal swarf production.
Yeah. Well, and also something that people don't think about is that, yeah, the gearbox is generating swarf. It's in the oil, and you know the connecting rods and the crank is coming around and splashing in that oil, and it's getting flung all over the walls of the engine. So it's like, even though the oil's not getting pumped through the journals, it's getting splashed all over the place. So it's going to work its way in eventually.
Yeah. A series engine. Is there any method of increasing the life of rubber CV gators and steering? Yeah, buy decent ones. Important from Japan. Yeah.
Or silicone. Yeah, that's the easiest way. Avoid the rubber completely.
Yeah.
I mean, there's stuff you can spray on them to try to protect them from UV damage and things like that, but at the end of the day, they're intended to be moved around and exposed to the elements, so they're all well.
Yeah.
So I plan on just doing them every so many years.
Okay, so Pete Holmes, dwell. Can you have too much dwell? Yes, you can. So if your points cap's too small, you can have too much dwell, and that will cause potentially the points to overheat and your coil to overheat as well. So yes, you can have too much dwell. Matt Steele, how good are you at mapping? I've been mapping cars on and off for a number of years, including turbos and various bits and pieces. But I tend to do my mapping. I can do it sat beside you while you drive. But in reality, mapping's best done on a rolling road.
I think the last one you had was at CG Remaps, at least on video anyway.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned it.
So
that turbo
yeah,
part.
and there's also one, I think, well, I did a map and I went to the guy's house, and I think it was a white and red car, if I remember. No, it was a, beg your pardon, it wasn't that. It was a Mini Clubman, sort of a fast road Mini Clubman in, I think it was sort of a light sort of pea green sort of colour. A very nice car, and it had a mapped system on it that wasn't mapped, so it drove terribly. But obviously, I mapped it while I was there, and we went out and drove it, and I dialed the map in, and we got somewhere near there. Was it optimum? No, because I couldn't do the load sites and hold the engine under load and monitor, you know, trying to find the maximum timing I could run, or sorry, the minimum timing I could run for maximum power. I couldn't do any of that. I had to do it on the road. And this is what people don't understand. If you want a map system, you know, a couple of days on the rolling road is probably what I would go for, and you might have a £1,200 bill for rolling road time, plus fuel, etc., needles if you're doing all that carburetor stuff. Rolling roads are not £120, right? You don't get anything for that. You know, you've got to spend hundreds. It's all time, all right. And as soon as you've got a mapped or an injection system, you know, injection systems are terrible because you've got to do cold starts. You might need to do 5 or 6 cold starts. The car needs to be there for a week. Yeah, talking big bills.
Yeah, it's not 2 hours. Plus, as you tweak the timing, you know,
yeah,
double-edged sword.
Okay, forward 160. Please bring a mug and 2 stickers when you come to mine next Monday. No problem. Thank you very much. I will do. Alex Ashby, looking forward to seeing you in June for a tune-up AC. Been watching your vids and doing the basics to get ready. Nice one, Alex. I look forward to seeing you too. Mayfair 92. Ball wash aside, where would you direct your focus on an engine which takes ages, 30 plus seconds to start, for HS4 with correct idle mixture with 65D and correct coil? It's fine when up to temperature. I'd say you've got a problem there. So if you've got a 0.8 ohm coil, are you running a ballast resistor? Okay, so if that's running a ballast resistor, there's your problem. You also want 35 thou plug gaps. You want HT leads with 2 or 3 K resistance at the most, and you don't want resistor plugs.
Yeah. Yeah, pull the plugs. That'll tell you if your mixture is right or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, plugs don't lie.
He says the starting problem prevents me from checking oil consumption. Well, clearly, when you said it starts, so when it starts, go for a long drive and see what the oil consumption is. Yeah, A-Series, and Darren's feed is breaking up. Yeah, so you are a little bit,
Right.
you're a bit hazy, Darren. So clearly, we've got a problem with your connection tonight.
Yeah, I'll go out and come back.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, okay. Mayfair 92, pretty sure we covered a lot of that. I might be running before I can walk. I'll get the bodywork sorted first. Yeah, a lot of people focus on the engine and then leave it for 6 months and then wonder why it's deteriorated again. Don't worry about the engine until you want to, until you're ready to use the car. Once you do that, you only have to do the engine once, then and it's ready to run. That's what it's all about. A lot of people get a car project and they worry about getting the engine working and they put fresh fuel in it and then leave the car for 6 months. And it's like, what are you doing? Don't sort the engine out. The only thing you want to do, if you've got a new project, you might want to run the engine initially to work out if it's any good. And that's fair enough. But don't fill it right up full of fuel if you're going to then take 6, 9 months, year, 2 years to sort the bodywork out. And if you are going to leave the car, for Christ's sake, use fuel stabilizer. So we've run out of questions, I think. And half the people are left.
So I do want to point out one thing. We're talking about dwell and the performance of the ignition system. One of the details that gets overlooked is, are you getting proper voltage to the coil in the first place? So the alternator is putting out 13.5, 14 volts, but if it's running through crappy wiring and bad connections, it might only have 11 or 12 at the coil, and that'll be a big problem.
So very interesting you say that, because I've had just that issue, and a lot of people have this issue. They're running a 3 ohm coil and then they upgrade to a 0.8 ohm coil and then they put it on and it doesn't run properly or it's not starting properly, and they do that and then they put it on and they've only got 10.5 volts at the coil, right? Because there's resistance in all the connections in the ignition switch, and the increased current demanded by that low ohm coil can't be supplied because of resistance in the supply system. So yeah, this is a very real problem on old cars, and it's something that needs to be checked. So you can't just fit a 0.8 ohm coil and expect everything to be, perfect. You have to check that you're actually getting the supply that you need at the coil when the engine's running.
Yeah, I know. I've added a few new wires to cars while I'm out doing the tuning, because it's just like there's no point in trying to tune a car. It's only got 11.5 volts while it's running.
Yeah, and when you're cranking it, it's even lower.
Yeah,
and it won't start, and you've only got sort of 7 volts while you're cranking. You think, what's going on here? And it's because of the resistance in the wiring looms that supplies the coil.
yeah, and it's really simple repair too. It's just like 48 inches of white colored wire with 2 connections right to the fuse box. Well, I mean, depending on the car, but yeah, it's not that difficult to make a repair to that problem.
I'm being asked what stabilizer. I'm just going to disappear off and get a bottle of stabilizer.
Right.
So, David, if you look at my video playlist and you look down there, there is in my list of videos, there is 2 that I did on fuel stabilizer. So you will see that. But I will answer that question for you now. I'm just going to go and get a bottle.
Yeah, and I also did a video. In fact, it's the first video of my classic mini survival guide series, where I talk about stabilizer and the importance of running stabilizer and the effects of not using stabilizer. Yeah, the corrosion is quite dramatic when you don't run it and let stuff sit in that fuel.
That's what I recommend. It's marvelous stuff. Yeah, it works really well. And the way you do it is you run your fuel tank down with the old stuff. You go to the fuel station. You put in the required dosage, which that size bottle, which is the 250ml bottle, will treat 75 litres. So I tell people, if you've got the large 7.5 gallon tank, put half a bottle in, then fill the tank up. All right, and then you must drive the car around for 15 or 20 minutes to make sure that fuel gets from the tank all the way up the line, through the pump and into the carburetor, and then you're protected. So that is a fantastic product.
Yeah, and it comes in like 2 or 3 different flavors. So if you have like a marine boat, kind of thing, they have a different version for marine applications, but they have a storage and they have like a daily use version. So I just keep both in my garage and then use whatever I need to for whatever I'm doing. I even run it in my normal cars, just because they might sit for a few, 3, 4, 5 weeks, and I don't want them to develop any problems either. So there's no harm in running it.
Yeah.
And it's not that expensive either.
No, that's right. I mean, that's I think if you buy it online, it's about $11.50, something like that in the UK. Plus shipping. But if you buy it from me this year, it's still £10 a bottle with no shipping. So actually, I'm one of the cheapest places to get it, and I bring it to your house. And the reason why I keep the price cheap is because if I come to your house and tune your car and you start using that product you buy off me, it makes my service better because your car will run and start much easier, if you're using that product. So that's why I bring it with me. You certainly give us a lot of information on which to dwell. Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Thanks.
Stefan Mini Cooper, should I adjust the plug gap now because I changed the Bosch Blue Coil? Yes. Why were you only running 15,000? Anyway, but yeah, I'd say probably with that coil, yeah, probably 25,000 is a good place to start. Maybe 28, maybe even 30. But see what runs best for you.
Yeah, more power, bigger gap.
Yeah. Yeah, 427 2005 Stabil. Yep, that's the product. And they do Stabil storage, which is the one I stock, because that's what I give to people when they're leaving their car 4 or 5 months over the winter period. And they also do a product called Stabil 360, which is what you use all the time. And that's supposed to deal with the effects of moisture. If you've got a system that can attract moisture. The Stabil storage, though, is the high concentrate, and that will keep your fuel good for 2 years. It's fantastic stuff.
So I do want to point out what you were saying about the fuel absorbing water. It's a problem with cars that don't have controlled emission systems. So like if you don't have your fuel tank hooked up to a vapor recovery unit, which is connected to your engine, that tank is always exposed to the atmosphere. Or if you have a vented cap.
You mean that system that all the owners rip out because they think it's useless? Yeah, I know the one.
Right. Yeah, so it's like, they design that system so that the vapors flow into that tank, which usually has carbon in it, and then the engine sucks in the fumes from there. But that carbon layer also prevents the moisture from drifting back into the tank. So it works in 2 directions.
Yeah. But as I say, most mini owners rip that out because they go, I don't know what that is. I fucking don't need it. Right. And actually what they're doing is doing harm.
Yeah, because the moisture gets back to the tank, starts corroding the tank. Yeah.
Yeah.
Modern fuel is designed entirely for sealed fuel systems. That's why it goes off so fast.
Okay. So, John Rudolph, 940 head valve combination to go with that RS cam, larger intake, 35.7 intake, 29.4 exhaust is all you need.
Yeah, that's what I'm building for my injection car that I've got in the garage to fix. That's the exact combination. Different cam.
Yeah. Okay, so George Z, thinking of going down the turbo route for my Mini. What's the ideal CR to aim for?
5.
Okay, you know, I mean, all right, you're asking a question there. There's no way I can answer that question. I don't know what cam you're running. I don't know what boost you're running. I don't know how long you want the engine to last. You know, there's so many points here. The other thing to understand is I'm not a forced induction guru. Yes, I've mapped a lot and I've tuned a lot and all the rest of it, but I don't know what the current state of the art is. I've designed some cams for specialist components, so they have my RS FI cam, they have my RS FI Plus cam as well. So the important thing to understand is talk to somebody who builds these engines if you want current information. I can give you a guide, okay, but it won't be current state of the art. So someone like Turbo Phil, Phil Dorr, he's probably one of the best people to speak to if you want information about best cam combinations, best boost to compression ratios, all that sort of thing. Cam timing settings for that. He would have all that information. Okay, much better person than I.
Should probably talk to John Guess about his suggestions for gearbox building.
Yeah. Okay. I do know a little bit about gearbox building though, because I spent 20 years building all the gearboxes for ML Motorsport. So not a lot of people know that, but I learned a lot, and I've done a lot of them. Not as many as John, but I've done a lot.
Yeah. Well, these turbos are just going to chew up the gearbox no matter what you do. It's going to be the limiting factor, regardless of what the engine does.
Yeah. Stefan Mini Cooper, but I have a 1-2-3 ignition. Can I still use a bigger gap? Yeah, of course you can. But don't go too massive, because you know, if you cause a misfire because you haven't got enough coil power, remember you've only got 1.2 ohms. That's not 0.8. All right. So, you know, I'd say maybe 28 thou is probably about where I'd say is a good place to go. Mayfair 92. Mechanical, electrical, or electric fuel pump?
Electric.
To me,
I always run electric.
I've always used mechanical, okay, for just road cars. However, if you're using an electric fuel pump, there are benefits. You know, it's a lot harder to steal a car with electric fuel pump if it doesn't work, for example. And you can then have more flow if you've got an engine that needs that. You can have an inline, you know, sensible inline filter system, and a adjustable pressure and all the rest of it. So yeah, doesn't really matter. To be in all honesty, but if you need outright flow, then you have to go electric anyway.
And if you're going to run mechanical, you need to get a genuine SU. I don't trust any of the non-genuine SU mechanical pumps on the market.
Yeah.
Whereas I trust several of the electric ones to do the job.
Yeah. So if you're going to use mechanical pumps, 135 quid or whatever they are now for a genuine SU, please buy a genuine SU one, because I know the guys at SU, they've changed the rubber in that diaphragm so it works with ethanol fuel. I saw a post the other day saying, I managed to get a new old stock from 19 whatever, and it's like, you're just going to kill the damn engine because it hasn't got the components in that new old stock pump to work with the new fuel. Stop it. You know, go to SU and buy a proper pump, right? Your engine needs it. So if you're going to use a mechanical pump, only use the genuine pump. Don't use anything else. A lot of the aftermarket ones, especially the ones that are about 26 quid, are junk. So just don't use them.
Also, I had a car come in for tuning work, and it had a mechanical pump, and I went to do an oil change, and 8 quarts came out. So the mechanical pump had failed and started bleeding fuel into the gearbox. So it was just about to kill that engine.
Yeah. So I've had engines that have been destroyed with mechanical pumps because the diaphragm splits, especially it's happened You know, now we've got ethanol fuel. The old pump diaphragm splits because it's not rated for the ethanol fuel. Pumps fuel straight into the sump, thins the oil out, washes all the lubrication out of the bearings, and destroys the engine. Terrible mess.
Yeah, fortunately, I was able to catch this quickly, so I don't know how much damage occurred, but it still had good oil pressure after I cleaned it up, the mess. But yeah, that's the reason why I don't run any mechanicals, is for that reason. There's no chance of fuel being dumped into the gearbox.
Yeah, so there you go. There's another reason for using electric. It's not going to dump fuel, you know, into the gearbox, and obviously wash your engine out. But you also need to make sure that when you're using the electric pump, that you're using one with the right pressure. And if it is too high pressure, make sure you've got something like a filter king on the end of it with a adjustable pressure, and that you've set it properly. For SUs, you only want 2 psi. You know,
Yeah,
one and a half to 2 psi, not 4. Okay.
Yeah, and I know from testing that Hardy brand is a 2 psi pump.
So Rachel's asking about my t-shirt.
It's a good one.
Did you have that specially made? I've got a friend, a lifelong friend, and his name's Big Mike. And usually for Christmas he sends me t-shirts, and they're all custom made. And he sent me the perfectly reamed one, and that's because I obviously make and sell the radius arm reaming tool. So that's why he obviously did that. So I don't ask for these; I'll just get sent them for Christmas presents, and I think they're fantastic. And he's got a good sense of humour. So unfortunately, at the moment, I've been so busy, I haven't been able to make any radius arm tools. I do have enough parts to make some stock because I've just got them in. But my point is, I will be doing more radius arm tools in the future. Darren Robert Shaw, AC, seeing you soon at Caldwell Farm. I still have my inlet manifold to plumb in and my vacuum gauge to fit. If leaving these jobs until after, would this be detrimental to the tune? Well, clearly you want your inlet manifold in, so that needs to be done. But you don't need a vacuum gauge for tuning. When you fit your inlet manifold, make sure you've got no leaks. So I use usually when the engine's running and idling, just spray some brake clean around, and if the revs rise or fall, then you've got a leak. Steve Crook.
Any stress?
Go on, Darren.
Oh, if there's any stress on the exhaust headers against the intake manifold, you'll never get it to seal properly. So you almost have to fit the intake and the exhaust together, get it to seal, and then bolt up the exhaust so that it's in a totally stress-free placement. Otherwise, the stress of the exhaust can pull the intake off a bit and cause a leak.
Yeah. Okay, Steve Crook. I started using Stabil for winter storage this year. I'm really pleased that my 3 minis all started instantly after a period of non-use. There you go. Can I use Stabil with Miller's VSP Power Plus or Octane Booster? That I can't tell you, but I do know there are other products on the market that have stabilizer and unleaded in. Maybe that's what you might want to be thinking about using. All right, but definitely a fuel stabilizer. At the end of the day, you may or may not need an additive if you're not using the car a lot anyway, like an unleaded additive. So I'm just advising a lot of people now is why are you still running without valve seats? You know, get the valve seats fitted, and then you won't have an issue.
Yeah, plus your car will run better because you resealed everything. You got new valve stem seals, and it's just a better way to go.
a valve job will make the performance better anyway. Okay, so Billy Joe Denny, awesome listening to the Masters. I wouldn't go that far, but thank you.
Hey, Billy. He sent me an email the other day about a distributor question.
Okay, is he from the States?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for the people online that are from the States. I appreciate that because you are actually the United States is my biggest viewers. So I have more viewers in the United States than I do in the UK, only by a couple of percent though. So it's very close. But the point is the Americans watch my channel more than anybody in the UK. So thank you very much.
Which is funny because it's the exact opposite for me. I have more UK viewers.
it's a
I
funny
don't know.
world. Yeah.
But yeah, Billy's got a point. I mean, most of my videos are just me working on stuff. So you either see my hands or I'm pointing at things. You never
Yeah.
really get to see me on my camera.
Yeah. And well, I suppose that's how a lot of us. The only time you see me on it is normally when I'm doing my interjections. So you don't see when I'm working, you don't see my face unless my daughters are doing the videoing. So
Yeah.
I'm hopefully going to be using one of my daughters later in the year once their exams are finished to do a bit more videoing. But the only time you see me normally is when I'm either sat here talking to the camera when I'm doing the explanations and things, or I'm doing the demonstrations and someone else is filming. So should all mechanical pumps from the 1980s and early be? Yes, all mechanical pumps from the factory, any factory mechanical pump from 1995, all of them. If you haven't got a new one on there, you're on borrowed time.
Also, with the minis, you know, they're super easy to fit. There's a giant space back there, and they sell brackets you just bolt onto the subframe. Like all you have to do is run a power wire. If your car wasn't originally fitted for it, it's such an easy conversion to do.
Matthew, still, I always love these questions. Look, with regards to fuel pumps, would you still run 2 psi on a boosted engine? Yes, but I would have the rising rate boost regulator. So it's 2 psi above whatever the boost is. So if you're running 15 pounds of boost, it's actually running 17 pounds at the car. Yeah. So you might want to, you know, if you need a 96 thou flow jet in there, you might need 2.5 psi, maybe even 3. Okay. If you've got 200 horsepower, for example. All right. I don't know what your application is, but you need the rising rate regulator. But 2 psi, you know, is usually plenty. But for a turbo, you might need a little bit more. The most important thing is, as soon as you get over 4, the standard needle valves that you get, well, all the needle valves you get from SU will leak. So there's no point in trying to go too high. You only want to go up enough. All right. And you also have to remember is if you've got 3 pounds on that seat and you're going over bumpy roads, that seat's going to leak. Okay. And if you've got 3 pounds, it's going to leak a lot more than if it's 2 pounds. Okay. So as long as your boost regulator is working and it's upping the fuel supply, then I would say if you're on a dyno, do some load testing and see what the actual pressure is at the carburetor versus your boost. And if it ever falls down to the boost reading while you're driving, then clearly you haven't got enough response from your regulator, or you might need to up your, your regulator setting to compensate for acceleration and things like
that. Yeah, you mentioned that bumpy road bit and the seat design. That's a whole another subject, which I learned recently from you.
Yeah. So you know, lots of pressure. Now, on my own road cars, 1.5 psi on twin carbs. You've got, twin carbs reduce the pressure because you've got two valves feeding that. And if your engine's doing 50 to the gallon with twin carbs, and you've got 2 valves at 70 thou, whereas 1 valve at 70 thou would supply that at 1.5 psi. The more valves you have and the more pressure you have, your chance for leaking and wasting fuel goes up exponentially. So yeah, if you've got twins, small seats and low pressure. If you've got a single, by all means up the pressure a little bit, 2.5 maybe if you need it, but you don't want much pressure at all.
Yeah, in fact, when I was doing my testing for my custom vacuum module, I was doing a fuel consumption by filling a vial with fuel and measuring the consumption. And this was only hanging off the edge of the hood with the hood open. So my head was like 1.5 feet for the fuel to travel down. So that gives you the indication of you need very little pressure to run the carburetor, even at high RPM. That was sufficient to keep it running at 5,000 RPMs. It's not a lot of pressure. The volume is important, but the pressure isn't.
Yeah, Stefan Mini Cooper, or convert to electronic pump. He's got a Hardy pump and it's perfect, no risk. Yeah, fine. Yeah, we said that. Yeah. Eric Denny, what's the highest you'd push the RPMs comfortably while driving hard? What engine? What application?
He says 1275 A plus.
Okay, sorry, I didn't read that. Okay, well that engine's rated to 6,000 RPM, right? The conrod bolts are rated there. But why you would want to push it that hard if it's not developing power there? So if it's a standard A plus engine, it's probably all finished by 5,500. So there's no point in revving it harder. If it's an MG Metro engine, yeah, you can push it to the red line. But again, you're going to, it's extra wear. All right. It's a long stroke engine. There's a lot of stress. All right. Despite what people say, the engines won't put up with RPM for long periods. It wears them out. So, you know, only use the RPM when you need to. Don't use it all the time.
Or like me trying to stay on the highway with a high, low geared Elf trying to do, 60 miles an hour. It's 5,500 RPMs for 2 hours. It's nothing left of that engine.
Just remember, the factory used to do those tests at that sort of RPM for 100 hours to see if the crank broke, and sometimes they did. Right? You just did it for 2 hours. So how much fatigue have you put on that?
Down to 98 hours now. It's a clock that just goes forward.
Yeah.
It did it. Didn't like it, but it did it.
He did like it. He didn't like it, but he did it. Yeah. Right, where are we? We're hour and a half, nearly an hour and a half in. 45 people online, 39 likes. Can we have some more likes? If there's anybody online that hasn't given us a like, that will be lovely. Thank you very much. So we started off at 100. I think there was a lot of extra people on there that maybe didn't realise what our, that this wasn't for them. So I think we're down to the normal, and nearly up to 50 again. So thank you very much for those people that are staying in. Anything else you want to put in this while we got no questions? Anything else you want to say, Darren?
Well, I always like to find out topics that people want to hear more of, because you and I can sit around talking all day long about whatever, but at the end of the day, if people really want to hear more about coil voltage and how to measure things like that, then we need to know. I've got a gearbox here that I need to do a complete rebuild on, and my thoughts are doing just inspect it just for things that you can visually tell while it's sitting on a bench. So just a basic crude guide. Like, I don't feel like doing a step-by-step instructional on how to tear it apart, but that's just me. So, there's no point us doing videos if no one ever asks to watch one. So I always ask for feedback on what topics they want to hear, or if they just want to hear us do live streams for forever. That's fine too.
Yeah.
But
so
it's nice to get external
that would help both of us. If you got any ideas about the sort of things that you want us to make videos on, in amongst all the other videos that we do anyway, that would help us, because some of the things I want to do, but I'm just not getting around to it. Things like
cam timing.
Cam timing, yeah. And yeah, everyone keep asking that, and I keep putting it off. It's like you doing your gearbox, keep putting it off.
Yeah, been sitting here a month.
Exactly. Yeah, but the cam timing one's been floating around in my head for a long time, but I've just I've got to have the time to do it, and got to be in the right headspace to do it as well. Yeah, I tend to do videos that are convenient at the time, depending on the work that's coming through. So I haven't done a lot of technical videos recently, purely because I've been snowed under with flywheels. Right, I've done flywheel videos. There's no more videos I can do on flywheels, but I've got a load of flywheels to do. Can't make more videos, so there are no videos being produced when I'm doing work that I've already done videos on. So that's a lot of my issues, and that's why you get this time of year you get a lot of videos on the road tuning, because they're all yes, it's the same, but it's all different cars, different people, different places. So that's what people like to see.
Yeah, and to your point, now that tuning season and driving season is right here, you're going to get more workshop related videos coming out of me because I've got way too many cars I need to work on, and
Yeah.
I just don't have time to do the more technical focused bench builds because
Yeah.
I've got, again, convenient content to work on in the garage.
So you've just you've walked into it now. It would be really great to have a nice gearbox rebuild set. There you go.
Fine.
Fine, I'll go and do it.
Let me take a week to rebuild a gearbox.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Randy.
Gearbox rebuild. There you go. There you go.
I like Pete's comment.
Yeah. Never put off until tomorrow. What can be done? Put off indefinitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait indefinitely. It actually has to get done, but I'm still waiting for the engine to come back from the machine shop so I can assemble that. So I have some time, but it would be nice to get it finished and get it off the bench because it does take up quite a bit of space.
Okay, so we're running out of questions. So we might be coming to the end. If there's no more questions, then we're just going to sit here staring at the screen.
I did buy so a sneak peek on a future video that's coming up. I did buy a system that optically aligns headlights because I always wanted to have something that could do that precisely.
Yeah.
And it was really actually a really interesting kit. It uses a lot of camera mirrors and viewfinders and bubble levels. So you have to do a bunch of calibration work, but once you've done that, you just stick them on the headlamps and off you go. It only works with the headlamps that are sealed beam with the little alignment posts, but that's like the majority of stuff in this country up to 1985. So it's kind of a fun one for me. I don't know if anyone else is going to care about it, but I'm doing it anyway.
That's good.
And I was surprised
Right.
how far out my headlamps were. I was really
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah. So I tend to use my garage over the way from where I live. The chaps that did the engine in my EcoBoost, but they do all the headlight alignments and they're really good. So I normally say to them, can you set them as high as you can legally, so we don't annoy anybody. But I like to be able to see. Down here you can't see anything, and a lot of people have them terribly aligned. So I have them as high as I can get without annoying anybody. So that's what they set them for, and they always do. I have that same on every car that I have. Lift them as high as I can, but I don't want to be illegal. So they set them up for me.
Yeah, I've always used a wall and a tape measure and tape and try to do all that, but this is so much easier and faster.
Yeah. So Matt Steele's come back. When would you change plug gaps from 30 to 35 thou? I wouldn't, because I'd go from 25 to 35 thou. So typically, plug gaps are all about coil. Yeah. So if you've got a 1.4 or a 2.5 or a 3 ohm coil, right, you want 25 thou plug gap on a Mini. Okay. If you've got a 0.8 ohm coil, then run a 35 thou plug gap. Sometimes you might want to change your plug gaps. And if you've got a rolling road and you want to optimize the power output of your engine, then you can spend time dialing in your plug gaps because there's a little bit of power to be had, but it's not a lot. But if you're racing, it matters. So, sometimes I've used 22 thou plug gap, and I've got more power, or I might have a 32 thou plug gap. Or a 30 thou plug gap with a 0.8 ohm coil because I'm running an engine that's got a lot of cylinder pressure, right? And it's harder to fire that mixture with a lot of cylinder pressure. So typically a boosted application, you might be running 28 thou of plug gap with 1.5 bar of boost, for example, and you've got a 0.8 ohm coil. Yeah. So, plug gaps are tunable items. Okay. And when you see me on and you see me doing the videos and I'm saying, right, this is 25,000, this is because all of those engines are basic engines, right? They're all basic road engines and they're not high cylinder pressure. They're all within normal road, road use. So if you stick to 25 thou for 1.4 ohm up to 3 or 3.7 ohm coils, you'll be fine. Okay. If you got a 0.8 ohm coil, go for 35, you'll be fine.
And this is for 4-cylinder engines.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
I did a
more
Jag and I set
cylinders,
it to
you
30.
might want to reduce that plug gap, or conversely, you might want to increase the plug gap on a bigger engine because it might have lower cylinder pressure on each cylinder because there's more cylinders. Yeah. So, you need to think about that. There are tunes to be played. Okay, yeah. Crypto Birdie, spark plug leads. Do you have a preferred brand? And when testing, what's the right amount of ohms? Crypto, you haven't watched any of my videos, have you? Can I make a suggestion? Right. If you go and watch some of my recent videos of on the road tuning, I do that all the time. So I'm checking resistances and all that sort of stuff. And you'll see me. And I only use power spark leads because they got the right resistance. And the resistance you want to look for is typically anywhere between 1.2 and sort of 3k per lead. Thereabouts is absolutely fine. 5k per lead is the typical factory lead. Okay. And that's okay, but I like to run a little bit lower. All right. And that's why I use the power spark leads. And the other thing about power spark leads is they don't vary. So the resistance is usually very consistent amongst a set of leads. Some leads that I've had from some of the mini suppliers, I've seen where you take them out, one's 5k and the next one is 12. Yeah. Or as I had the other week, I was doing some work and one of them was 20k and the next one was 4.5. Okay. All within the same set. Ain't no good, right? You need all your leads to be very close in resistance.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. So I pretty much stick to the power spark ones because of what you just said: consistency and reduced resistance, or I should say optimal resistance. Because
And the price is not expensive. They're very good. So I think they're 16 quid or something now for a set of those power spark leads. And you know what? Just
different
replace
colors.
them every year, right? Put a new set in, service item, right? They're so cheap. Just put a new set every year, and you won't go wrong.
Yeah. It also depends on like plug resistance, whether or not you can actually get the non-resistor plugs. So whether you can get the non-resistors or not, you want to make sure you're getting the right wires.
So some people have the traditional copper core leads. If you use a copper core lead, then put in a resistor plug, right? So you've got 5k resistance at the plug, and that will work fine.
Yeah, you got to pay attention to that relationship between the two parts of the system.
Dean Cook, how about a video rocker arm rebuild, installation and setting up, including relationship with push rods, cam followers and pedestals? Dean, have you had a look at my videos that I did on my 1.3 offset bush rockers? Because I show a number of combinations there of how you set those rockers up with shims, etc. So it's one of those videos that I don't do, and I haven't done because it's one of those sneaky secrets that the racers like to keep to themselves. Okay, and if I did that video, then that would probably annoy a lot of engine builders. So yeah, so that's interesting. So I have done a video on rocker geometry, but it's in with my 1.3 rockers. So go and have a look at the offset bush rocker videos, and I think it's the one that says ACDodd 1.3 offset bush rocker or something like that. But there's some interesting setups in there using the same rocker, getting all different lifts. All right, and that that considers push rod length, shimming, etc.
I saw you had a picture of a pile of rockers. Does that mean you're going to start rebuilding soon?
Yeah, I've got to do more. People are shouting at me for rockers and radius arm reaming
Yeah,
tools, so I've got to try doing it somehow.
yeah. I
So
need at least another set of 1.3s
yeah, so
because
I need
I
to.
had the set.
Yes,
Yeah, I the set I have here. I'm probably going to be using on that single point car, so I'll need a replacement for that. So I need another set. So Randy's talking about when he broke down the second time on our trip. He had a coil plug wire combo problem.
Oh, okay. So what happened there then? What caused the breakdown?
Well, he had a Bosch blue coil, which is like a 3.5 or something.
Yes, they're 3 point. I think if I remember right, when I measured, they're always about 3.4, something like that. Yeah, about that sort of figure. Yeah,
Yeah, and then the wires were fairly high resistance because they've been used for a long time. And then
yeah,
the plugs had to limp it back for, I don't know, back to my house so I could put a new set of leads on, and then we found a new set of plugs. But he's got an aluminum head, so they have those narrower plugs. So fortunately, I found a set
yeah.
locally for him. But yeah, that was one of the bigger problems. But yeah, it was coil energy and voltage, a lot of ignition related stuff. But that was the gist of it.
Interesting video as well is if you look at last year's Riviera run video, you will see in that video the coil power problem and the effect that gap does. There's a point in that video where I gap the spark plugs and everybody notices it runs better. Yeah, and it's because it's got I think it's got a 3 ohm coil and it's running variable dwell or something like that. Anyway, and the gap's too big and it's not quite running smooth because it's missing. And then obviously we gap the plugs and the engine, that was it. Just gap the plugs and away she went. And people were like, "Wow!" And it's like, "Yeah." And I turned to the camera and go, I turned to the people and go, "Gap plugs. That's the point. Gap your plugs. It runs better." And that's
and I did a whole video on using a feeler gauge and
yeah,
how to set your gaps.
yeah. I mean, it's funny,
It's so important.
you have to do a video showing how people use the feeler blade, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah, because it's not necessarily an intuitive thing. Like, yeah, you can pick one up and start doing stuff with it, but if you want to be accurate, you need to understand more about it than what's going on. You have to be very precise about using it.
Randall, the calls was just short between the seat and the steering wheel. Excellent. Billy Joe, I have a small bit of problem with run-on happening. Been speaking with Darren about my dizzy. Run-on, it's usually associated with the RPM that you're running at. And have you got a tuned engine? Has he got a tuned engine? Has he got a cam in it?
I didn't get the engine specs yet.
Okay.
I told him to go measure his distributor timing curve because he bought a new distributor.
Yeah.
So I said, go start there. Go watch my video, plot out the curve, and we'll figure out what to do next.
I like Dean. He's asking all the right questions. Can you purchase correct length push rods? No. You could so some, I think MED make a tubular push rod set with the ends on. So you buy the push rod and then you machine it to the length. Personally, I like to make when I do it, I typically try and reduce the effective unsupported length of the push rod. So I use a standard push rod, but actually make it either longer or shorter. But I make a foot that goes on the bottom, and then it reduces the effective unsupported length. So effectively, it makes it stiffer. And then you can have a longer push rod, which is stiffer than an original one. And I've used those in applications over 1/2 inch of valve lift at 8,000 RPM, never bent one. And that's using a 6mm push rod. That works really well. But expensive, handmade, time consuming, machine work, all that kind of stuff. It's the sort of thing, if I made you a set of push rods like that, you're talking 500 quid. Yeah. So it's the sort of thing you make yourself and you don't necessarily pay somebody else to do. So if you're going to buy a set of push rods, I think MED, I'm right in saying MED make a tubular push rod with ends. So you buy a set of those and then you'd work out your optimum length. And then you'd machine that push rod to give you the length that you needed, and away you go.
I think Spares actually sells a tubular one as well, the fixed length, but they're intended to be a factory replacement type, which are supposed to be stiffer.
Okay, yeah, tubular ones would be stiffer, but the benefit of the tubular ones with the ends is it's a straight piece of tube, and you can just easily shorten it to what you need. Not a lot of the time I find I need longer push rods. So push rods need to be longer sometimes, and not necessarily shorter. Just depends on how much has been skimmed off the head, block, all that sort of gubbins, and how much lift you got, and what type of rockers you got, and how much shimming you've got under. You know, there's just so many things to look at.
You also find that the hole for the cam has been, you know, inconsistently drilled. Like board the block, like, you know, if you're up or down, or, you know,
Yeah,
in or out
yeah,
a little bit.
yeah, yeah. How about a video on modifications? Yeah, it tends when I do those videos, I tend to do a video because I've got the job in. I won't do a video if I haven't got the job in. Yeah, so that's why there hasn't been one. But I mean, I could do a video on making your own push rods, but it certainly won't be now or any time in the future, near future anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't do an engine rebuild video just for the fun of it.
No,
it's just too much work.
So videos have to be done generally when the work's in, and you've got the appropriate stuff in front of you. And right at the moment in front of me, I've got carburetors. I've got carburetors behind me. I've got RTS clutches. You know, maybe we could do a video on an RTS clutch at some point, but I'll have to talk to Elliot about that, because I don't do the clutches. I just set them up and balance them. So Elliot actually builds the twin spring clutch, for example. And so a lot of people think I do them. I don't do them. Elliot builds them, and I just set them up for him.
You certainly do a lot. I really appreciated you showing the slop in that pressure plate. That was a good little short video.
Yeah, but that was I took that opportunity. It's like, oh yeah, here's a good example of just as it comes, and it's crap, right? And that's something you have to fix. There's no point leaving it like that, because wherever you take it apart and put it back together, its balance won't be right. So you have to get that so it goes together in the same place every time. Yeah, Billy Joe's just said there, I hope you guys do this again. I'll be measuring my curve soon, Darren, and sending the information. There you go. Wonderful.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and Billy's watching my video on how to plot a curve and going along that process. So
yeah,
I appreciate him for going through that.
And I won't ever be needing to do that video because you've now done it. So when I need somebody to go and measure their advanced curve, they get given your video link.
Yeah, the distributor videos seem to do well. I get a lot of views off my distributor videos.
Brian Davis, thanks to AC for the help on picking the correct ACDodd cam. How do USA viewers buy ACDodd coffee mugs? I need to talk to the supplier here. As far as I understand, if you go to that link, it's the Lemon Stationery and Gift. If you've got that link, just send a message to the website. Okay, so contact them. They will be arranged. They will be able to send you that mug. Okay, but you can't. You're right. You can't buy it off the website. And I haven't really fixed that because I haven't had thousands of people wanting to buy a mug. It's one or two. So nobody gets rich off of selling mugs. But I would appreciate if you did buy one. So thank you very much. So if you were to contact that website directly by sending them a message, they will be able to sort that out for you. But what I will do is clearly I need to get that link, and I will put it in as a comment once this video goes up, and it's available for people to see. All right. I think we're getting to the end of it, Darren.
Well, I suppose you and I can only chat about so much for so long.
That's right. Before we get bored. Yeah. And people get bored as well, and they disappear. So we're down to 37 people now, but we have got 52 likes. So thank you very much for the 52 likes. Appreciate that. So just to let everybody know, I don't think I'm going to have a video this Friday. And that's because I've run out of footage for on the road stuff. And that's because I didn't do anything this weekend. I actually went to the NEC in Birmingham for the Practical Classics restoration car show, which was very good. I didn't take any video because I thought I'm going to have a day off and enjoy myself. So I did. So
any cars that you really like there?
I like a lot of cars, but I like the American stuff with big engines. Big engine stuff, yeah. There was all sorts of nice things over there, but there was a, I think it was a Mercury something, I can't even remember what it was, but it was a great big sort of early 60s Mercury with a 390 V8 in it, and it was absolutely trashed, rotten as a pear, you know, an absolute wreck. But obviously it was there that somebody had rescued it out of a shed somewhere, and they was going to, you know, and it had a powered roof and, you know, all massive thing, land yacht. And I thought, Christ, you know, this is £100,000 worth of work easily, you know, to get this thing back. But somebody will do it, and you know, fantastic. Brian's come up and said, "Are roller rockers a worthwhile upgrade for a non-modified engine?" No. What you got to do, what you got to do, Brian, is why do you want the rockers? Yeah.
That carb's for Brian.
Oh, wonderful. Well, yeah. Why do you want the rockers? In my experience with roller rockers, if you use them on a road car, after a period of time, they wear out. Okay, and the rollers can sometimes drop out and things like that. They don't all wear out, but a lot of them do wear out. So that's why I went to do my 1.3 rockers. I decided to use a standard rocker because they last forever. Well, say ever, they last 100,000 miles and not have a problem. So that's why I use those rockers. So I'm a convert for using a non-roller rocker in a road application where mileage is key. If you're racing, well, that's a bit different, yeah. And you're not using them for mileage; you're using them for performance, and you throw them away after a year, and that's how you race. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Plus, if you're racing, you probably have the budget to do cam replacements when cams wear out because of the extra strain you put on them from the roller rockers.
So normally it's roller rockers every year and a new camshaft. That's normally that's the path of the course. Ian Otley, it's been great listening to you both whilst at work. Well, I'm glad we made your evening at work more palatable, Ian. Looking forward to the next one with added bonus of Ross. Absolutely. So although we won't have Darren on the next one, Darren, I'm sure, will be in the comments, keeping everybody in line. Thanks, Darren, in advance.
All questions for Ross as well. So
yeah. We'll be here with Ross next time. So we'll look forward to seeing you, Ian, at car shows as well, because no doubt you'll be at Riv Run and a few others. So I'll see you out there, Ian. Brian's back on again. Just curious if there's any benefit in terms of wear, oil life, etc. No benefit. Wear in terms of roller rockers, yeah, there's increased wear with roller rockers in terms of the rollers and tips and the rockers themselves, rather than reduce. You know, they do have an effect on reducing wear, but the reduced wear seems to be counteracted by the increased lift. So, you know, the more lift you have, the more wear you have anyway. Yes, you don't maybe get the side loadings, but certainly what I've noticed is if you increase lift, you get more wear.
Yeah, and you think about it's a geometry problem, right? You've got a valve going up and down, and you've got a rocker that's got to push. Like eventually, something has to twist and side load because you're forcing it to go further than it was designed.
Yeah. So, Brian, I would say to you, if it's a road car, just stick with a conventional rocker. But by all means, I don't know what your engine spec is, but I would recommend a 1.3 rocker for most applications. But yeah, depends on, you know, the ratio depends on what you're doing.
A+ 998.
If it's an A+ 998, that would benefit from a 1.3 rocker. even in standard form, and that's because it would change the valve events. So you would gain a little bit more overlap lift, and you would open those valves a little bit quicker. So that would benefit you, but it won't be anything like it would be if you change the cylinder head and camshaft as well.
All right, now I need 2 sets of those rockers. Maybe 3.
Well, clearly I need to wind up the old milling machine and get going on them.
I'll order enough to get you to do them. How's that?
Yeah. Just how many do you want? Look, just send me 10 sets. Yeah.
Yeah, don't
Ian
want to
Otley,
mess
mugs
about.
available at Riv Run. Saves on postage. Yes, the problem I've got at Riv Run is space. So I will bring mugs with me, but there's probably only going to be about 10 because I just don't have the space to carry lots of mugs. So the best thing to do, Ian, is come and see me early to get your mug.
Yeah, people don't understand how much stuff that you have to carry to these tuning events.
Yeah.
Car, like dizzies, all the tuning supplies or every carburetor you're going to encounter.
The problem I have with the Riv Run is my gazebo. That takes up a huge amount of space. So it's the gazebo and all that stuff. So, and solar panels and everything else. So tables and all that. So my point is, I have much less space when I'm going to the Riv Run than I would do if I'm going to your house. Okay, because I'm taking much less kit, and I do take a trailer with me as well when I go to the Riv Run, and I'm fully loaded. So there's no space. So I will have some mugs, but I won't have loads.
Yeah, I can't take a Mini to do even just one car. It's just not enough space in the car. Even if it was a van, it'd be tight.
I still get people laughing at me, and I go, "Do you need all these tools for tuning?" It's like, yeah.
Yeah, because all it takes is you not having one rotor arm or one specific piece, and finish the tune for some reason, or you have to make a compromise. You don't want that to happen. I was doing a Jag yesterday, doing a tune on it, and I was there for about 7 hours because there was a bunch of other work to get the car ready to tune. But we were finally up and running and tuning, and then the starter stopped working, so I couldn't finish the tune because we couldn't get the Jag to start again. So yeah, it's just frustrating to have to get stuck in the middle of a tune for something that you could easily, have on hand. Not that I could fix the starter, but you get my point.
Yeah.
If you don't have a coil, then what?
Yeah.
So you have to bring tons of extras.
That's also a good point, though. If a car's not ready for tuning, because you could argue that was potentially not ready for tuning, then the customers are kind of wasting their money because they're not getting tuning, they're getting repairing. Yeah. So, I always say to people when they book me for a tune, is the car ready for tuning? If I go there and it won't start, then they have to bear in mind that they might end up having me making the car start, not tuning it. All right.
Yeah. And of course, whenever you're doing tuning, there's always the risk you run into an engine that's just too worn out to tune.
Yeah.
That's another big problem.
Yes, Ian, thank you. I got your PM.
Boy, that Jag was a lot of fun, though. I kind of wish I could have taken it out for a drive. A fresh set of
anything with
nice
2 HD8 2-inch SUs on it is not going to be slow.
Yeah, fuel is just flowing freely. Yeah, the engine, it had a number of miles on it, but it was still kind of, I would consider it fresh. A few years. But yeah, those 4.2 engines are great. They're smooth. They just have tons of power. And then once you get those carbs balanced and dialed in, it just goes. And it's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so I believe we need to draw it to a close because it's actually the 2-hour mark. Believe it or not.
Okay. Well, appreciate you getting me on again, and nice to see everyone in the chat.
That's no problem at all, Darren. I appreciate having you here. Sometimes I don't necessarily give you enough time because I've got so many things to answer. But the point is, it's better than just seeing me on this screen, that's for sure. And it gives you a chance to get your message out to people as well, and helps us because this is transatlantic. So we're doing this from the UK and from the US all at the same time. So I'm trying to link people together, like-minded people together. Don't matter where you are in the world. Try and get the right people on here to so that questions can be answered sensibly, and people have a place that they can come to and ask questions and know that they're going to get answers which are sensible and realistic and have some base in reality, i.e. what we learn is passed on to people because we do it as part of our as our day jobs when we're working on cars.
And also, we have information from doing it all the time. We're not just sitting in our chairs, spouting information from a book that may be obsolete. It's like, this is current, valid information, and it's hard to get this elsewhere. Also,
Absolutely.
I want to point out that it'd be nice to get anyone from the other side of the world involved, like Australia. Just get some local experts, because I do get questions from countries, and you can only do so much from this distance. So if anyone's interested, get in touch with us.
No problem.
Especially for tuning.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got people there now saying thank you very much. And you got a big Cuban hug to Hillary as well. That's very nice.
Thanks, Steve. Will do.
Okay. All right. So I think what we're going to do, we'll round it up now and we'll call it a night. So with that said, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I appreciate all the likes, and I'll see you in, I think, about a month's time, towards the end of April. Keep watching my Facebook for the dates when it's coming out, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again. So see you later.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.